I am going through all of the perks, ammo mods, and field upgrades, testing every single base item with all 6 augments to figure out which ones are working, not working, busted, and also overpowered. Now the next up on our journey is PhD, a very smooth ride and perk. I've learned something through this very simple perk that it's gonna be really weird, but if I tell you that some augments make other augments completely useless, would you believe me? Tribologist is nerfing you. Let's talk about that plus all of these augments in deep detail with their stats in today's video. Let's get right to it. So before we get into our video today, as always, I must give a disclaimer. Now, whenever I'm doing any of these augment testing videos or anything like that, I do make sure that if there's any variances of about 5 to 6% within any of my testing, I try to make sure I go and like figure it out until I can't get it wrong anymore. But with that, I also have to make a confession. Premiere Pro does not work the way that we think. If you're a creator and you use Premiere Pro to figure out timing and such, I learned something and I have to make a confession to everyone. I'm sorry. All right, so up first, whenever we do this, I'm actually going to talk about base, PhD, and then we're going to go over the major augments first and then the minor augments. I'm going to explain why we are going to do that. So obviously everybody already knows PhD. Everybody already knows what it does. PhD flopper in this game is what it is. So this just means that as you flop, your prone is going to, or excuse me, your dive to prone is ultimately going to trigger an explosion, which is going to increase the higher you fall. Now, what does that actually mean? We're going to talk about that here shortly. But this is really weird because it says immunity to all self-inflicted damage and status effects. Well, what are status effects? That's the big question. And then also, we already know that you get immunity to fall damage while diving prone. I'm just going to tell you that's immunity to all fall damage while diving prone. So no matter how high up you jump, as long as you dived off the cliff, you're going to be good. So what are status effects? Do stuns and falls count as status effects? So stuns don't count as status effects. Fall stuns don't count as status effects. If you watch my stamina video, you'll know that there is a fall penalty, and that is a fall stun where you're dazed. That does not count as a status effect. However, car explosions from manglers do count as status effects, and anything else where there is some sort of outside force acting upon you that has to do with any sort of effect does count. So that's not including if you do any self-harm to yourself. Obviously self-harm, we do know that, well, outside of my PhD video, we know not to put on PhD if you want to maximize your XP, right? Now, what is the damage done for explosions at different heights? So one of the biggest things that I thought would happen is that you do more damage if you fall from a higher height or something like that, or if you die from a higher height, which is not the case. However, the explosion, this is going to be very important. The explosion increases the higher you fall, not the damage. Now, what does that mean? There is a specific circumference of each explosion. And depending on how you can buff that explosion, the explosion itself does not do more damage, but the radius or the radius of the explosion gets larger. That circumference around it also gets larger. So let's talk about that. So when it comes to diving prone, the circumference is what ultimately gets bigger. The radius will across that circumference, and that will then give you a larger blast the higher you fall from, meaning that it gets larger. Now, one very important thing to understand is that when you are flopping with PhD, the explosion, the center mass changes depending on how you're utilizing PhD. Now, when you're just flopping, center mass of that explosion is right in front of your head whenever you go and you prone dive. And you can see that in my visual here. You can see that ultimately the entire explosion is in front of your head when you dive prone. Now, this is and can be manipulated in a different way. Why? Because this means that, let's just say you're sprinting towards a horde of zombies straight on and you dive straight in front of them. you need to be aware that the explosion is not going to be anywhere past your shoulders backwards if you're running straight on from them. So that means that every zombie must be directly in front of your head. It can't even be on the side of your head, or else it will not get affected. This is one of the reasons why a lot of times we die so much when we're doing any kind of PhD explosions or flopping, because we would imagine, because we can't really see that quickly, we would imagine that that explosion is your entire body. So you can dive right in the middle of a horde, but that's not the case. The explosion is only at the top of your head, right in front of you. Now, as you dive from higher heights, that radius of that explosion gets larger, meaning that yes, it does spread to behind your shoulders, eventually behind your waist, eventually potentially behind your head if you're diving off of something extremely high. So in that case, yes, you can find that, but it's also really hard to tell the point at which it reaches each individual portion of your body based on the height. Just know that if you fall from the bridge or from bank, if you fall from the bridge on Citadel or the bank on Liberty Falls, then for the most part, you're going to get full circumference around your entire body. But anything at about half of that, it looks like it only goes down to about your waist. So just be cautious of that, especially if you're just running head on into a group of zombies. Make sure that they're in front of you, not on the side of you. And if you do, that's fine. Now, another cool thing about this that I learned is that you can flop up angle, like immediately. As long as you can get a tactical sprint in to be able to make that flop happen, you can do that, which is awesome. You can flop immediately from tac sprint. So you might not have even need to get two steps in a tac sprint before needing to go ahead and flop. You can flop instantly as soon as you activate the tac sprint, which is really cool. That's also gonna be something we're gonna talk about here shortly. From there, don't try to run backwards or any other direction when you're standing up from a flop, because if you stood up from the flop, or if you did the flop, there's probably zombies near you, behind you. You need to run straight in front of you, because remember, center mass of that explosion is right in front of your head. So you will take out the zombies directly in front of you. So immediately stand up and sprint straight forward, no other direction. That's also another reason why a lot of people end up getting killed. And then also, PhD does not get more kills with insta-kill on. So let's go ahead and talk about our very first major augment. This is going to be awesome to talk about Gravity MD, because Gravity MD is kind of the opposite. And so instead of needing a flop, this is where just falling from heights creates explosions. So one thing I really want to say is that yes, just falling from heights will create an explosion. It's going to be about 4.5 meters. This is what's going to create an explosion for you. And it'll create a very minimal explosion. With this, center mass of the explosion is center mass of your feet. So this means that you can rely on wherever you drop from, the zombies in that area and right around your body will be affected. Now with that, it does the same amount of damage as a PhD flopper does, meaning that it'll one-shot any zombies in that immediate area, which is really cool. But another thing I want to say is that jumping can also make that happen, right? So if you jump a little bit higher, you might ultimately get just a small amount of circumference or radius larger for that explosion. So just understand that. I'll say that jumping from heights does not reduce your damage taken or does not give you immunity to fall damage. Up next is Dr. Ram. So Dr. Ram, tactical sprint, knocks down and damages base zombies. Super simple. It will do 10% damage for zombie HP throughout, and it'll scale the entirety of the map. And then the zombies are knocked for 4 seconds. Now, the downside about this is that you cannot re-knock a zombie that's already currently knocked. You can only knock down one zombie per explosion. If you can get access to hitting multiple zombies in one line, like maybe you shoulder check them. So if you got a whole line of zombies and you shoulder check each of them, yes, they will get knocked. But the likelihood that that will happen is very slim, because when you hit one of the zombies, your attack sprint is likely going to get deactivated because you're also stopping as you're trying to run through them. Now, I think most of the time that people are using this is mostly just for in case they get trapped. But I'd love to hear you guys' comments in the comment section down below. How do you use Dr. Ram? Up next, let's talk about PhD Slider. Now, this is everybody's favorite perk, honestly. So PhD Slider, sliding into enemies, trigger explosions. Well, how much damage? Hard to say, but I could only maximally count 10 zombies with one explosion. And also, any of those zombies are one-shotted, just like PhD Flopper and also Gravity MD. You would hope and assume that if you're running and you slide through a group of zombies, you would hope that, you know, maybe the zombies that it came with immediate contact of got, you know, insta-killed or knocked away. But then along that slide, you would hope that the zombies that did not get insta-killed, they would have gotten knocked back or something. So, Environmentalist, probably the most useless augment for this. So, become immune to environmental damage while sliding. What does that mean? Well, environmental damage. This is any damage created by the environment. So this is traps, falls, like the tomb falls, car explosions, the magma and the CDM boss fight. I did not get the chance to get to like the gas clouds for Patient 13 or wipe attacks, but everything else that is not from you and that is not necessarily coming from the enemy's bodies or not created by the enemy ultimately counts as environmental damage. However, it is not often that you're sliding by in a car explosion. Besides that, there's like no real utility for environmentalists at all. If you guys have any utility for it, please let me know in the comments below. Please, because I would love to be able to make an amazing build out of this. I love to make amazing builds out of worthless stuff. But up next, we've got EOD. So EOD is a really cool augment because it does not work the way that you think it works. Slightly reduces height and distance requirements from explosions. So you would assume that this means that if you jump from 4.5 meters, maybe now you only need to jump from 3 meters in order to make the jump happen, right? Or you would assume, well, now for a PhD Flopper, in order to create the explosion, now you can just jump sooner, or with PhD Slider, you can start sliding sooner. That's not the case. When it comes to PhD Flopper, as I told you before, as long as you can issue or start the tactical sprint, you can also immediately flop and get the explosion. So slightly reduced distance doesn't work there. Then we've got Gravity MD, just falling from heights creates explosions, which you would think that it does work there, right? Because it makes sense. Slightly reduce the height requirements. But no, even from dropping at 4.5 meters or 4 meters, did not create any earlier explosions. And then we've also got Dr. Ram. Tactical sprint knocks down and damages base zombies. So you would also think maybe the height requirement in order to knock down a zombie will then get lowered. Well, no, because as long as you can, once again, if you can start the tac sprint instantly in the same split second, you can knock down a zombie. So there's no space for reducing that time. And then PhD Slider. As soon as you can start the tac sprint to start the slide, at that immediate moment that you start sliding is whenever the explosion trail happens. So it's not reducing the height or the distance required to activate the explosions. It's only reducing the height and distance requirements for the explosion radius. You can see my visual here on the left timeline, or essentially you've got 3 meters up to 7 meters. Now, for example, with Gravity MD, if you dropped from 4.5 meters, the radius of the explosion might be about 4.5 meters, will put you at about 17.5 frames wide for that explosion. This EOD does not mean that now you can start the explosion at 4 meters or 3 meters. It means that the size of the explosion, the minimum requirement of that size, lowers. So if you then look at the next timeline over on the right side, if you're at 4.5 meters, now you just have a larger frames of an explosion. So all EOD does is reduce the amount of distance or height required for the explosion's radius. So this ultimately gives you a much larger radius for doing anything. That's all that it does. So if you are using EOD because you're trying to get the explosion to activate sooner, that's not what you want to be using it for. You want to use it to make the explosion radius larger. That's what it does from an earlier point. This has nothing to do, it does not work with Dr. Ram at all. It does not give Dr. Ram a larger explosion radius if you're using it. And on top of that, even if it does, which it actually looks like it does have larger frames, Dr. Ram in that point can still only knock down one zombie per hit. It cannot knock down two zombies, and it doesn't do any additional damage to multiple zombies in that at all, unfortunately. So if you're using EOD and Dr. Ram, you're using it completely wrong. So don't use Dr. Ram if you're using EOD. Now, with that, it just gives everything else a slightly larger circumference. So PhD Flopper, Gravity MD, and PhD Slider just gets a slightly larger circumference. But once again, when it comes to PhD, we'll talk about PhD once we finish up Tribologist. I know that I'm your friendly neighborhood credible zombies. I know that I'm your credible source of zombies information and stats, and I have failed you deeply. And I apologize for that. If you use Premiere Pro to figure out any of your timings, this might be something for a lot of you creators, anybody that likes to figure this out. This timing header right here, this playhead position, but also the time down here that it tells you, like the duration of time, it only goes up to 59 and then it switches to the next second. Now, I thought that this was counting time in milliseconds, but it's actually counting times in frames per second. So this means that this right here, this number, this might be seconds, this is minutes, and this is hours. This number right here are frames. Now, in my past videos, most things that I test are almost always in seconds, not necessarily frames. So it does not matter too much in my previous videos. But in this video, I'm going to talk a lot about frames per second. So understand that this is 60 total frames per second. So whenever you see 42, that means 42 frames in that time. It does not count time in the same exact way that milliseconds does. There's 1,000 milliseconds per second. So you can ultimately equate 1,000 milliseconds equals 60 frames per second. So it's super like statistical, deep dive thinking kind of stuff. But if you are a creator and you did not know that about Premiere Pro, then hopefully that helps you out a little bit, because I didn't realize that until this video when things did not make sense at all for me. But now it makes sense. Now, Tribologist is a really cool augment because this augment allows you to do some really cool stuff with sliding. So I want to make sure I added in a good bit of information. But currently with no Tribologist on, no PhD Slider, with just PhD Flopper on or off, the current slide distance is 10 meters. If you add on PhD Slider, that boosts up to 12 meters. If you have on Tribologist instead, it boosts up to 15 meters. So you get a 50% boost to your distance or your sliding distance by having Tribologist on. And as far as the boosted speed, so you go from about 6.4 frames per meter to 3.6 frames per meter. So boosting it by about 50% speed as well. Now, with this, let's talk about speed let's talk about Tribologist versus Stamina. So Tribologist is faster to move around with than Stamina, even faster than Hotfoot. So you can see on my visual here that your base walking speed is 13 frames per meter, so about 4.4 meters per second. You can see that with Tac Sprint using Stamina, you've got about 6.3 frames per second, so about 9.4 meters per second. But then also, if you remember, when you use Hotfoot, you just get a base of 10 meters per second. Now with Tribologist, your slide speed with Tribologist is 3.6 frames per meter, which is 16 meters per second. So much faster than Tac Sprinting with Stamina on. Stamina is going to boost your slide distance by 20%. So you will be able to move at that same pace So you'll be able to move at that 16.6 meters per second, that same pace, but you're gonna go just further for about 20%. So I must add though, that if you have on PhD Slider and Tribologist, you might be nerfing yourself. All Tribologist does is give you a longer distance to slide and you can slide faster. That's it. Technically, that means that enemies from further can get hit if you have on PhD Slider. That is cool. But you don't get any more kills. You just slide a little bit faster and hit those zombies further. That's about it. But EOD will give you a larger explosion from smaller slides, which means that you can hit more enemies. Tribologist is nerfing you if you have on PhD Slider, because you're not taking advantage of the maximum amount of damage or killing zombies, which is the purpose of zombies, not just to kill zombies from further. Purpose of zombies is to kill more zombies, especially if you're trying to slide. So with all of that being said, I actually did not expect this video to be so long. I did not expect that it could be this long. With all that being said, guys, I hope that today has been very helpful for you. Let me know, did you realize just how dumb Environmentalist is in the game unless you're using it in a boss fight, right? Did you know that Dr. Ram and EOD have just don't work together? And then did you know that PhD Slider was getting nerfed by Tribologist? I'd love to hear all of your comments and your thoughts down below. With that, guys, if you would like to join an amazing community, coached and mentored by me, working on building our mental, creative, and financial freedom within our community, definitely go ahead and join our new academy and community where we're going to be able to be very vulnerable. I'm going to be sharing all types of resources to help you with building up yourself, daily journals, creative routines, building your hobbies, your habits, finding different financial resources to help build yourself, and all tons of things. I'm taking my business and life consulting, my finance agency, my content creation journey, and my mental health journey, putting it all to one to be able to cultivate an amazing community of people who are looking to be able to grow, connect, share, have vulnerability, have accountability. So feel free to go ahead and join right now. You can pre-register at the link in the description below in order to be able to get free, full lifetime access, no gimmicks. This is just for our community to be able to really grow and share and understand each other, and also connect and network and build each other up as well. So feel free to be able to join our Gamers Freedom Formula down below. That link is in the description. Check that out. And then also check out DSB's. Use code CHARMING15 for a discount on any of their skincare products. There's a lot of really good stuff, and they've got a lot of amazing things over there. So make sure to check them out. And also let me know what your favorite is. Let me know. Do you like the tattoo bomb? Because that tattoo bomb is pretty tight. Even my tattoos are really nice and good. So with all that being said, guys, I would love to see and hear some of your feedback in the comment section down below. Just listen, there's a lot of stuff that I do for you guys. And so I'm excited to be wrapping up the perks section. We have Elemental Pop and Melee Macchiato. And I'm gonna try and rush through them pretty quickly so that way we can get to all the rest of the good stuff for the rest of the season. Especially now that Truck is probably never gonna give us another perk, Field Upgrade, Ammo Mod, or anything else ever again in this game. So that's the sad part about all of this. I hope you guys are doing well. How are you doing? If you made it this far, here's what I want you to do. Comment in the comment section a picture of a star, a zebra, and an elephant. Star, zebra, and an elephant. Let me know if you made it this far. Why am I still here? Why are you letting me still talk? Watch my latest video on depth perception. I know that you wanted to watch my latest video on depth perception. Is that my latest video? I don't even know. Is that my latest video? What's my latest video? I don't even know my latest video. Depth perception is my latest video. Yes. Yeah, go ahead and watch my latest video on depth perception. It's right here. Look, listen. I know you don't like depth perception, neither do I, but watch it. And I don't even know why you're still letting me sit here and talk. Have a beautiful goddamn day, guys. Watch it.